The people are waking up. The people are fighting for their rights. And it's not just because of the increase in fares, but for many other things. There are too many things that have accumulated so much pain, so much poverty, and it is us, the people, that carry that burden. Today we have woken up, and we will not be stopped.
Protests in Chile show no sign of calming down. Though Chilean president ceded to calls to cancel a transit fare increase in Santiago that sparked the fare evasions, his government has also instituted curfews in Chile's major cities and sent military onto the streets of Santiago and Valparaíso. For lawyer Iván Zamorano Lefort, the protests go beyond the transit situation and are rooted in a deep social discontent in the country.
Without doubt, there's an accumulation of anger which is potent and transcends a larger part of Chilean society. And that's basically related to the precariousness of labor and the privatization of social rights. We need to understand that the Chilean constitution must be the only Latin American constitution that does not guarantee rights. It guarantees access, which is different.
For over 5 days, Chileans entered Santiago's subways en masse and jumped turnstiles as a protest to the fare increase announcement. The fare hike would mean that a Chilean earning minimum wage would have to pay around 20% of their wages in order to be able to get to work. In response to protests and discontent, government spokespeople suggested that those who could not afford it should take transit during non-peak hours when fares are cheaper, meaning waking up early and riding home late. Initially concentrating action only in downtown Santiago subway stations, the groups of people gathering to evade fares grew and expanded to stations outside the city core, and authorities responded by closing. The situation escalated on October 18th, when riots broke out in the capital and police were deployed. Media reports acknowledged that Chile's capital had not seen images like this since the Pinochet dictatorship. President Piñera responded to the mass protests by declaring a state of emergency, sending military to control the streets of Santiago and later the port city of Valparaíso. People in Santiago watched in shock on Friday night as the military were sent onto the streets for the first time since the end of the Pinochet regime. The country's structural inequalities stem from the neoliberal constitution enacted under dictatorship and left largely untouched since then, says history professor Cristian Mellillán.
For a long time now, there have been demands to make structural changes in the country, to change a model that was set in place with the Constitution of 1980, that has been deepened by the governments that followed. And people have grown tired of demanding changes on different occasions. From pension reform, which was perhaps the most massive movement, along with a precarious healthcare situation, wages which don't go up, the minimum wage is still too low.
Chile is also one of the most unequal countries in the continent. And for years, Chileans have engaged in mass protests against the impacts of neoliberal policies in the country. In recent years, student demonstrations calling for free education were followed by huge protests against private pension plans and environmental destruction from mining in some of the most ecologically fragile parts of the country. Prices for basic goods, healthcare, education, and transport are beyond reach for many working people, meaning many Chileans are forced to rely on credit while accumulating debt.
The owners are the same, it's still the same capital. Things have not changed much in 200 years in this country. So this is a necessary point of inflection to put forward ideas about what kind of society we want, think about what kind of state we want, what sort of government we want, and how we want to participate in decisions made here.
Protests, including cacerolazos, broke out around the capital and spread across the country, including into gatherings on Saturday. The Piñera administration, refusing to acknowledge the root causes of the protests, responded with repression, instituting a curfew in Santiago, Valparaíso, as well as Concepción. Since Friday, over 600 people have been arrested. Interior Minister Andrés Chadwick, who is also Piñera's cousin, declared the application of the Interior State Security Law. This law is regularly applied in criminalizing protest and labeling protesters as terrorists, particularly in areas in southern Chile, where the Mapuche indigenous communities fighting for their land rights are constantly repressed.
This is perhaps a moment to generate constitutional change, to overcome the Constitution of 1980 and lay the foundation for a new state. one that is not necessarily founded on the neoliberal model, so that things which should be rights, like health, education, pensions, retirement, social services in general, be discussed as they should be, as human rights, as fundamental rights that shouldn't be privatized.
The protests come at a time when mass-scale uprisings against neoliberalism are returning to the region. This includes Argentina, where the right-wing government of Mauricio Macri looks likely to be defeated in that country's elections, and just weeks after Ecuadorians took to the streets to protest increases in gas prices. Demonstrations are expected to continue, and a general strike is being planned for Monday in defiance of the curfew.
¡Como tirano, vino!